Makima vs Gojo, Control vs Infinity. This is a pretty common matchup to come out in the last few years, and I can see why. Both are really overpowered, both inhabit similar narrative roles for the early parts of their respective stories, both have weird eyes, yada yada, you get the point. So let's get into it. If these two figures of power in their world were to face off, who would come out of it alive? Also, spoiler warning for the manga for both Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man. Now here's the thing, I can go into their physical stats and how they compare there. Like, Makima was able to punch right through weakened Chainsaw Man, and earlier in the series, Denji semi-tanks a blast that blows a large hole right through a building, meaning her normal punches are much stronger than that blast. And you can also infer that early version of Denji to be physically weaker than that version of Chainsaw Man, since he is less transformed. In comparison, Gojo is at least on a relative level, since an incomplete Sukuna was dealing significant damage to Jogo while tearing through a large building, and Gojo was ripping Jogo apart in their second fight. And I'll address their comparative speed at some point in this video, but here's the thing. This is not gonna end up being a close quarters hand-to-hand fight. At least not for Makima. Gojo's Infinity prevents any form of conventional attack, so even if Makima was strong enough to punch his head off, that just isn't gonna happen. Now I'm not gonna waste time going into the details of how this technique works exactly, since so many videos have delved in depth into that exact topic. But the most common interpretation is that it infinitely divides the space around Gojo so that anything that enters that space towards him continuously slows down, never able to actually reach him. We can be pretty confident that it works this way since even Gojo references the Achilles paradox, a principle that describes this exact idea. So if an attack doesn't directly manipulate space in a way that would penetrate this defense or bypass the distance between Gojo and his opponent entirely, then it's just not gonna hit. And even if an attack does hit Gojo, then it still might not do the trick, because he also has access to reverse curse technique in order to heal himself. Reverse curse technique can heal significant amounts of bodily damage, as shown with Hakari, with its only meaningful weakness in this fight being destruction of the brain. So the only way Makima wins this fight is if she can damage Gojo enough times to make him run out of cursed energy, something that is almost impossible since his 6 eyes reduce the cursed energy cost of his technique activations to almost nothing, or destroying his brain. This all being said, Makima is also very difficult to kill. She has a contract with the Prime Minister of Japan that makes it so all damage against her is transferred to a Japanese citizen in the form of an appropriate accident or illness. Since in 1997, the year Chainsaw Man takes place, Japan had a population of over 126 million people. Gojo would have to subject Makima to lethal damage over 126 million times in order to actually kill her. Unlike RCT, there is no limit to the kind of wound she can regenerate so long as it's an attack that is damaging her. So with this kind of battle, instead of talking about every ability they have at their disposal, I am instead going to go over every possible win condition either character might have. Now naturally, this means I am giving Makima all of her contracts she has and the entities she controls at the known peak of her power. I mean, her ability is to control things, so this fight is just boring if I don't let her use the powers that she's taken control of, especially since making contracts is the entire basis of the series' power system. Anyway, for Gojo, the win condition is very simple. Even if you want to argue that Gojo couldn't damage her with punches and kicks, which I don't think is the case, Makima never displays the durability to deal with something like his blue and red techniques. Hell, even if you want to argue that she does, the hollow purple technique would absolutely get the job done. Makima never shows durability anywhere near the power that destroyed this massive portion of the ground. And some people even interpret hollow purple to erase the matter it touches from existence entirely, given some vague statements here and there about the nature of Limitless. Regardless of that being true or not, Makima isn't taking it. Plus, despite how powerful it is, Gojo would use up barely any stamina even if he were to spam it. At least that's the implication. So hypothetically, if Gojo just keeps laying on the pressure, spamming attacks, ripping her apart, which he would have to do over 126 million times, then he would win. This all being said, Makima might not be so helpless as to be a long-term punching bag the whole fight. The first possible means of damaging Gojo that Makima might have is an internal attack. In chapter 33, Makima makes a Yakuza member start bleeding from his nose and eyes simply by looking at him. There is no indication that she shot some kind of projectile at him, only that he started bleeding. This is very likely an attack that doesn't have any need to connect with a person, it simply happens. Thus, it would probably bypass infinity. Now, this bit isn't confirmed, but this seems very consistent with a scene in chapter 46 when two devil hunters make the bomb girl sustain similar damage by making it so mold was growing in her internal organs. The way this ability is described and presented definitely seems like something that wouldn't need to go through infinity to deal its damage. Either way, this ability would only cause damage, as we are given no reason to believe this attack would be powerful enough to destroy Gojo's brain in one go. But depending on how it works, it would likely be constant damage that Gojo would be sustaining, making it a lot harder for him to fight even with a constant use of reverse curse technique. Also, again, it's not confirmed that she is using the Mold Devil, but if she is, this might give Gojo trouble since some molds are able to produce mycotoxins, and RCT doesn't automatically clear out poisons unless the user knows how. Then again, given Gojo's skill, it's very likely he does know how. Her second possible option for fighting would be the Angel Devil. Now, I'll be upfront, this one is really up to interpretation. The Angel Devil has the power to convert lifespan into weapons, and those weapons can have special powers. We are given no actual limit as to what these powers can be, but the most prominent one we know of is Aki's katana that can cut through intangible objects. It's very possible that Makima could use such an ability to create a weapon that could bypass infinity somehow. Maybe a sword that can cut through space, maybe a weapon that teleports to the inside of an opponent's body, etc, etc. I'm not going to pretend this is a great argument for Makima's favor, but I do feel the possibility of it should be mentioned despite the absence of evidence.
But I always say the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence.
The next option she has that might work on Gojo is probably her most likely way of ending the fight, but it's also the most boring. And it's not even utilizing a contract she has, but her main ability as a devil. Her actual power is to control any being that she believes is lesser than her. The wording here is important because the actual difference in strength between her and her opponent is irrelevant. The only requirement is that she sees them as lesser than her. Now, this is interesting because we do see the subtle ways this distinction matters throughout the series. Like, we never see her struggle to control a normal human being. But what about the weapon devil hybrids, Chainsaw Man included? Well, she fights them. In the case of both Riz and Quan Chi, she takes them both out, and the next time we see them, they're practically fawning over her, completely under her control. The most likely reason for this being the case is that with humans, she sees them as automatically beneath her, based on her dialogue anyway. And Makima's way of distinguishing beings is entirely through smell. So let me paint kind of a funny picture here. Makima and Gojo face off. Neither of them have made any move yet because the fight just started. To Makima, Gojo has the scent of just a normal human being, since we aren't given any reason she could pick up on cursed energy. And she takes control of him before the fight even really starts. Maybe she makes him love her since that's in character, or maybe she just tells him to kill himself. Now, for the remainder of this video, I'm going to talk as if that wouldn't happen, because that doesn't make for a very interesting fight. I kind of think it might be the most likely outcome. At the very least, it's incredibly possible, but let's put that probability aside and discuss the remaining facets of this matchup. There is one more option that Makima might have to damage Gojo. It's unlikely, but it's one of those things where I gotta bring it up on the off chance. In chapter 27, Makima performs some kind of ritual in which she sacrifices a person in order to crush another person. We don't really know much about this ability. We can understand the steps taken to use it based on observing it, but we don't know the mechanism behind it or the devil power being used with absolute certainty. And normally, I would dismiss this ability outright, since it's probably safe to assume that Infinity would defend against it. The problem is, again, we don't know the mechanism behind it. Maybe some invisible force literally crushes the person, or maybe the effect of crushing is something that simply happens to the body regardless of intervening factors. Like when this ability is being used, the body just does that, similar to a voodoo doll or something, which isn't impossible. When this ability is first used, the first victim spends a few seconds freaking out before he actually dies, like he feels something coming. It's not like human beings in Chainsaw Man have some sixth sense to tell something's wrong, it's literally confirmed they don't. So it would have to be something he physically felt, right? So maybe it is some kind of attack that targets the person directly as opposed to some external force doing the damage. I guess I should make it clear that I'm not entirely sure myself. It's kind of impossible to be, but I do want to present all the information as I see it. If we do want to say that this ability would work on Gojo, then all Makima would have to do is throw her army of zombies and devils at him to distract him, run off and perform the ritual with some devil hunters she controls. Reverse curse technique ain't bringing you back from that. But again, I'm not committing to this conclusion. I'd actually like to hear your thoughts on it though. So those are all of the possible win conditions I can think of for Makima, but a couple more things need to be discussed. The first is speed. I said I would get to this after all. Even if we want to grant either of them the ability to damage each other, that wouldn't matter if one of them can't land a hit on the other or just gets overwhelmed in speed, so let's discuss that. The speed feat that is most talked about in Chainsaw Man is when Quan Chi blitzes and kills some devil hunters and a ton of human dolls. Don't get me wrong, she is easily faster than a normal human can perceive, that much is clear. However, when calculating this feat, a lot of people do the math as if she crossed that entire distance in the necessary time frame to blitz all of them, which doesn't make sense because most of the people she kills are turned away from her and didn't even have a chance to react. The only ones who were shown to be looking at her were the devil hunters right in front of her. Granted, she is still quite fast since Aki was only able to react by seeing a few seconds into the future, and the angel fiend who can react to and block bullet fire was only able to react because of the warning Aki gave, and it's barely. So saying Quan Chi is faster than a handgun bullet is a safe bet. For context, a 9mm goes a little faster than sound. Now why am I mentioning Quan Chi so much? Well, in the same arc, Makima cuts off her head. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Quan Chi would have won a fight against Makima if she fought back. I am saying that in this scene, Quan Chi says she would do anything to save her girlfriends. I imagine that would include at least trying to move them out of the way. But no, she just gets her head cut off without protest. Personally, I'd put Makima in the low hypersonic range of speed, but it's all vague enough to definitely be up for debate. That being said, it's also entirely possible that I'm misreading that scene between them. If that's the case, then it's a bit harder to say. We know Makima is at least faster than the Angel Devil since she reacted to his attack, so I'd still put her above Sonic speed. Moving on to Gojo, it's kinda hard to say for him. Now, don't get me wrong, in terms of pure physical ability, not curse techniques, Gojo is still strong. He's still able to react to and fight very strong curses, like Joko for example. In fact, he destroys him. It's kind of hard to say where he stands in terms of physical speed when it comes to the top tiers though. Characters like Kenjaku, Toji, Prime Sukuna, Yuta. Because here's the thing, Gojo is the most powerful character in the series, but that is often attributed to the combination of the 6 eyes and the Limitless giving him access to an array of abilities that make him almost unbeatable. For example, I don't think Gojo is the fastest character in the series, but he can make up for it with teleportation teleportation. If we're talking pure physical ability, I would put Yuta above him for sure. It's even stated that Yuta has more cursed energy, and that's what's used to power up sorcerers. Now, Yuta scales in speed pretty close to Yuji since they were relative in their fight, and I know Yuta wasn't trying to kill Yuji permanently, but he was trying to fatally wound him and was notably having trouble with it before bringing out Rika. This same Yuji was getting almost blitzed by Naoya before even reaching top speed, and later on we have a much more powerful Naoya as a curse whose top speed is Mach 3. Unless you want to argue that no, Gojo is actually way faster than everyone in the series without the use of curse techniques. Gojo is capable of supersonic speed at most. Again though, without the use of teleportation. With that teleportation, I do think he would be able to keep up with Makima, even if I think he's most likely a bit slower than her. She does still have the Future Devil though, so it's not entirely clear who would have the slight advantage in this. This all being said, I do have to address the infinite speed interpretation for Gojo. The idea basically goes that when Gojo is trapped in the prison realm, he states that time doesn't seem to pass there. Despite that, he is talking. How is he doing that? Good question. Well, according to some, it's because he is so fast that he surpasses the concept of time, having literally infinite speed. I understand why this idea has come about, but I heavily disagree with it as I just don't think it's consistent. For example, teleporting around would literally be useless. Infinite speed would mean that the concept of time in traveling any distance would be irrelevant, making teleportation obsolete. I'm not entirely sure why Akutami included that statement about time not passing. Maybe he instead means that things don't age in the prison realm, it's hard to say. I just don't find the infinite speed claim some people make to be very convincing when looking at the whole series. Now, the last point I want to address is probably the hardest point to address. That is Gojo's domain expansion, Unlimited Void. Unlimited Void basically works by flooding an opponent's mind with infinite series of repeated information, simulating infinite information, and making them completely unable to do anything because it's so overwhelming. It's hard to say what would happen if Gojo used this in the fight. It's very possible Makima has some resistance to mental hacks, since she's one of the few beings able to remember things that have been erased from existence by Chainsaw Man. That's no small feat for sure, indicating some kind of supernatural awareness that goes beyond other people's abilities, even concept erasure. Also in the series, there's the Cosmos Devil, whose ability is to give someone complete understanding of everything in the universe, achieving a similar effect to Unlimited Void. And I've always wondered why Quan Chi never attempted to have the Cosmos Fiend use this on Makima. Would it not have worked at all? This is pure speculation, but I do find it worth discussing. Maybe Unlimited Void would completely affect her. Then again, she does again have the Future Devil and might avoid being hit by it at all. There's also the possibility that her contract with the Prime Minister might protect her from Unlimited Void. It's heavily implied that in order for damage to be transferred by it, it has to be intended as an attack. The nature of the attack itself is irrelevant, it's about how the person doing it views the action. If Gojo views Unlimited Void as an attack, then it probably wouldn't work. Again, hard to say. But yeah, that's kind of the fight. Gojo's big strategy would be to hit it till it dies, with Unlimited Void maybe incapacitating her to make that easier. Meanwhile, Makima has a lot of possible strategies, but their level of success is debatable. Like I said earlier, I think her detecting that Gojo is human and controlling him is just the most likely outcome, but if we ignore that, then her other options are varied in their reliability. I suppose that this video is less to give you an answer and my definitive opinion, but more to present all the info as I see it and hear your thoughts out. I definitely think it's a very interesting fight with a lot of factors involved, and I'm very curious to read about what you all think of it in the comments below. But with that, thanks for watching and have a good one.